Jacqueline, thank you so much for joining us. And I just want
Ew.
to go ahead and jump in with a really powerful question. And I want you to look back at that moment in 2016 when you decided to launch SeedX. And that was with just $200. What did it feel like to take that leap? And did you have any idea where that moment would lead to now helping your clients build more than $1 billion in revenue?
Thank you. Thank you for the flattering question. I think what I always say when people ask about the genesis or the beginning of SeedX is that I was too young and too naive to know what I was getting myself into. And I also didn't have a lot of money at all for that reason. I started SeedX around 21 years old, 21 or 22. And so I didn't know I guess I knew that most people had investment who were starting businesses, but I was naive and bullish about myself enough to think that I didn't need those things and that I would be all right. And so I feel a lot of gratitude that I started young because I think that if I had to start over right now, it would be a lot more difficult. I have a lot more needs and responsibilities and people to take care of, right? Starting a business or doing something so risky with so little to fall back on would be a totally different story. I think in terms of where we are today, I couldn't have possibly imagined it. I think I always imagined that I would hopefully create something big and impactful. But I think that just the thing that you don't really think about, you imagine having a big business and all of this success. What you don't think about is all of the people that you interact with, the team that you're going to build, which I couldn't have even perceived at that time as such a big part of the journey. So, yeah, I think it would be really difficult to envision where we are today from sitting back there.
Yeah, I think that's really a blessing and that you can't imagine all that's going to happen. You
Yeah.
just hold that possibility because we would be so afraid of how big the things that we can potentially create.
Mhm. Exactly. I think my, I always think this, and I think it's really important to share with other women, especially because we can be, we're so caring just by our nature that we want to plan for
Mm.
things and we want to look out. I've always been a very like anxious, over planning for the future kind of person. And I think as an entrepreneur, you can't be that way. You have to have a vision, of course, but you have to look at each problem as it comes, right? So today there's a problem that I'm solving. Tomorrow there's a bigger problem. It's more complex. I actually wasn't ready for it before, right? And so I think to your point, if I had known all the problems that I would have to overcome, it would have been paralyzing because you don't know what you don't know, and you learn how strong you are and how smart you can be and how much you can handle
Mhm.
by doing things one step at a time.
I think that's a powerful reminder, and you're so right. We want to plan ahead
Exactly.
with all the things, especially as moms. We've got the snacks, we've got the
Yeah.
all the things that we try to prepare for, but sometimes just being in the moment and learning what we need to learn and being resourceful as we can and leaning on our experience is really powerful. And that lends me to my next question in that you describe yourself as a self-made Latina entrepreneur, and I love that. As I mentioned, I want any entrepreneur to tune into this podcast and be able to see someone who inspires them. And for somebody who might see that as a limitation in this world, I'd love to hear how your heritage and your cultural identity actually inspired you and shaped the way that you lead and you build your business.
Sure. Yeah. So on my dad's side, my grandparents came over to the US during the Cuban Revolution when Castro was taking over Cuba, unfortunately. And my father was born here, and my mother is from Puerto Rico. And so I think I was raised with this idea of the American dream, which is that you can do anything that you really set your mind to if you're resourceful enough and if you care enough and you work hard enough. And that's always been a big part of my spirit or how I live my life. And I think that in terms of being self-made, I say that because I didn't have any funding. I didn't really have any guidance as to what an entrepreneur even was, honestly, for a long time until I became one. And so I do think it can be seen as a disadvantage because it puts you in a scary position. I didn't have wealth to fall back on or backup plans, really. But I think that if you harness that strength in the right way, it can be really powerful. I also think that because I came from that background and I always had to be pretty critical thinking, problem solving, standing up for myself because I was the first person in my family to finish college. And so I went to Columbia, which was a very competitive school. And I think that's just an illustration of what I have to do as an entrepreneur is be in this really competitive environment, figure out how to succeed there, figure out how to be a happy person there, right? And so I think that we should all look at those hardships that we have as inspiration for how we get through and the reason we can get through the difficulties that lead to succeeding as an entrepreneur.
I hope everybody who needed to hear that just heard that because it's so easy to let that negative bias kind of seep in our minds and convince ourselves that we have these reasons not to succeed. And actually, they can really be the fuel for success. And so I love that reminder. Um, and then you also mentioned investors, and I've had guests on the podcast who were told no on Shark Tank, and it was such a blessing to them, and they were glad they heard that, and it made them more resourceful, as you've mentioned too. But what are your thoughts on the entrepreneurs who feel that they need investors to succeed? Because you bootstrapped your agency to success, and so what did that teach you about resilience and creativity that you might not have learned had you had a lot of investors?
Yeah, I think there are a few things. I think that going back to this kind of self-sufficiency or resilience, whether it's a good thing or not, I'm not sure. But in terms of investment, I think that when you are putting in your, blood, sweat, and tears and your skin in the game, it really makes it so that you can't fail to
Mm-hmm.
an extent. And the more, like, even today, most of our profits go back into growth, into hiring, et cetera. And I think that it makes you even more dedicated to and tough to get through the difficult times. So I think that's a part of it that I think is important. Not to say that I think there are times when you should take investment, but I think that it can say a lot about a founder if they're willing to put their self into something and start small and then just keep growing little by little. I think that it can be really relieving or a really positive part of not having investors is that there's no one that I have to report to, really. So when I'm making decisions on what our business culture should look like, for example, if we have a client who mistreats our team really poorly, I'm at liberty to say, well, I don't care if that cuts our profits. I'm not going to allow this person to treat our team that way. Or I don't want to take the company in a specific direction. I think something else is more important, right? I'm at liberty to make those decisions. And I think that is something that I'm really grateful for. And it's allowed us to grow in the way that I and our other leadership team feel is best. So I think there's a lot of positives to not taking investment. The difficulty is that sometimes it can slow you down, and it's not so easy to get self-financing, small business loans and things like that, even though the banks like to make it seem like it's super simple. So I think everything has to be weighed and measured, but it's definitely not the only way.
Well, I love that because too, we're all about dispelling all the myths that you have to hold you back from whatever your goals are in business. And so we've already cut through so many of those. One of the other things you talk about is revenue synergy and aligning your sales and your marketing for exponential growth. So, what does that really look like in practice? And where do most businesses get it wrong?
Yeah, I would say this is typically a problem that comes up when we're working with a client who has a sales and marketing team. They are so interdependent. They're married, right? Like you can't have good sales without the leads and people who are interested about a product or service, who know about a specific company. And you can't have marketing showcase its true impact without having a sales team that gets deals done and at least provides a satisfactory customer experience. And so what people are usually doing wrong is siloing these roles, right? So having their team members exist on two different sides of the road. In the worst case scenario, they have animosity towards each other because they blame each other for outcomes on either side. In the middle, they don't really care, they don't talk. And then the best case scenario is that they're working synergistically. And so it's really just all about communication as a person to another person, but then also communication through tools like sharing data through a CRM. Very simple things that can be put into place to ensure that the marketing team understands when I put this message into the world, how does that affect sales? And so that sales can tell marketing, well, people are confused about X, or people have objections about this specific piece of the company. And that way, marketing can help sales by already addressing those objections beforehand. And sales can help marketing by understanding that messaging and following through on it. So I think that's super important. It's a problem that exists in almost every single company that we've come across. And I think that, yeah, I think that what what really leads to success is having those two teams in lockstep with each other.
I realize that maybe for listeners who have heard you describe some of the things that your business does, they're probably like, "What is SeedX?" Why don't you explain shortly for listeners what does SeedX do, and how do you help your clients?
Yeah, sure. So we are a marketing agency at the most simple level, but we do we believe that we engineer growth, right? That's our work. And the way that we do that is by aligning business strategy, data strategy, and then marketing tools. And so with this example, with the relationship between sales and marketing, if you don't solve the business problem, which is that these people are not talking to each other, the data problem, which is that they're not sharing insights, they're not sharing data points, then no matter how much marketing you pour into something, no matter how many leads come in or how many people know what your product is, you will not stop the leaky funnel or you will not get to that growth that you're looking to create. And so when we work with clients, our focus isn't just, okay, we think you need to put ads on Instagram. This is what looks, this is what a good outcome on Instagram is, but it's what are the core business problems that we need to solve? And then how can we make sure that we have the data structure and the channels in place to support that. So we take a really holistic approach to creating growth.
Well, I imagine so much of that, especially in a post-COVID world, is
Mhm.
working with and building remote teams. And that's really one of your strengths. And I think it's a big fear of so many entrepreneurs today that are starting their businesses online and wanting to build that remote team is how do you do it well? And so, as a strength, what is a blueprint that you go to for helping to build that remote team productivity, but also the cohesion, the cultural cohesion that goes with it?
Yeah, there's a lot in there. And I think as we grow, I'm still figuring it out, right? Because it's different when there's three people or four people, and the first few people who worked on our team, they still work with us today, and they're some of my like best friends because I talk to them every single day. And then once you get to 20, 30, 40 people, you can't possibly communicate with that many people each day. And people don't know each other. And so it totally changes how that looks, especially in a remote world. But I think that something that we've done really consciously from the beginning has been very clear about what our values are and what our expectations of people are. So, like, we want our biggest value is integrity, which is just the idea of being very transparent, putting the needs of the client before your own, etc. And then our expectations of people are that even though we're in this remote world, you're going to show up to work and complete your work and basically act like an autonomous adult, right? Because in the remote world, you can't babysit people.
Mhm.
And so I think that having those really clear guidelines in place has helped us. And what we focus on is making sure that there's a lot of we instill those values from the top down. So like I talked about those four or five people that I worked with closely every single day. It was really important to instill those values and to tell them like as we grow and we add 10 more people, now it's your job to instill those same values because if we lose them, then you're no longer going to have this place that you love to work at. It's going to change. And so a lot of it has been constant instilling of values, trying to create an environment that of course succeeds in terms of our outcomes, but also is a great place for people to work.
Mhm.
And then culturally, it's really interesting because we have a lot of different cultures on our team. And I think that there's a big like emphasis on sharing culture and also trying to understand each other's cultures. And I always tell this story, but it's funny. Our creative team is half and half in terms of its cultural composition. So we have a lot of Ukrainian designers on our team because Ukraine is like an amazing talent hub for UX UI design. And we have some really great both Latin American and South American, like US and Argentina based talent doing design as well. And their cultures are so different because in Latin culture, you're very over the top, like sentimental and emotional and like dramatic about everything. And Ukrainian culture is very direct. So in Ukrainian culture, if you don't like something, you just say, I don't like this, do it again. in like Latin culture and American culture, you kind of give people the compliment sandwich, which is, oh, wow, you work so hard. Thank you so much. I love this. I don't know. Maybe we should think about this other part a little bit more, but don't worry, you did great. And the Ukrainian team will just be like, I don't know what you're like, you loved it, right? Because I don't know what you're talking about. There are a lot of fun things that come up like that. But I think that can happen anywhere. And it's really just about building a company that has good communication and listening to one another.
Yeah. What I heard you say is you're intentional about it and you're consistent about it, which I think is so far ahead than many other people. And so you might not have a complete framework to work from, what works for you and your company, but just being intentional is a
Mhm.
really good place to start.
Yeah, and I think like with remote work, not even thinking about it as remote. Like I think some people think about, oh, I'm outsourcing this or I'm working with someone in a different country, which is silly to me because we're all humans
Right.
and the world is a global economy now.
Mm.
So it's just like, and I think making that clear to the people on your team too. Like, I don't view you as an outsider. I view you as part of this team. And that's really important.
Yeah. You're doing so much. You're leading a multi-million dollar company while also raising a 2-year-old daughter. So, how has motherhood reshaped the way that you show up as a CEO and a leader?
Yeah, I have a lot of empathy for parents for sure. I've also really learned to guard my time in a way that I didn't before.
Mm.
I used to be, and I still think I'm a very giving person, but I think that I just didn't assign much value to my time. And now the value trade-off is so huge to me. It's half an hour spent putting my daughter to bed or half an hour giving someone free time. And so that is probably one of the biggest ways. There's now so much at stake when I don't have time, or even time to just spend 15 minutes alone in your head as a mom is life-changing. So I see how valuable time is now. And I think everyone should probably see their time as valuable in that way. And I wish I did more so before, but I think when you become a mom, it's a totally new level. And I think besides that, I just almost in opposition to the time thing I just said, every day, and we were talking about this before, sometimes the week just feels like a hamster wheel. And every day something comes up that I'm not expecting. And some days it's worse, and some days it's not a big deal. But some days my day just gets thrown off the course completely because my daughter's sick and now I stayed up all night and now who's going to watch her? And I have all this other stuff to do, right? And at the beginning, I got so flustered by that at the beginning of my journey as a mom. And now I think now I'm just really learning how to go with the flow, plan as much as you can, but be flexible
Mhm.
and know that, you will get to that goal eventually. So, yeah. And one more thing, appreciate and accept help because I think that it's really hard for moms to accept help and to be okay with it, but we really need it.
We do. We really do. All of those are such great reminders. And again, we like to see motherhood as a reason why we can't go into business, but really can help you focus your time and make the most of it. And it can really be something that fuels your success. And
Mhm.
so I love that reminder. But so much of your work is about creating lasting value for your clients. And what other mindset shifts have helped you move from just building a business to building a company that truly transforms others' growth?
This is something I always heard people say, like at the beginning of my entrepreneurship journey that I didn't understand, which is stop worrying about yourself and what you want to sell or what your product is and focus on filling needs. And so I think, especially as a service company, so much of what we do is like service led, or servant leadership is like the official term, I believe. But like focusing on the best way to service your client and your team, like as a leader as well. How do I make sure that my team is set up for success? Of course, you have to take that with a grain of salt. You can't ruin your company to provide service to your clients or self-destruct because you're providing way too much. But I think that that mindset becomes even more clear as you get more into your business journey, that you're really the value in what you're creating is by serving others. And beyond that, creating lasting value is really, I think, interestingly enough, it's about going back to that integrity conversation or that integrity value that we have, which is especially in the marketing and business strategy or consulting realm. Sometimes it's about having difficult conversations with your clients as well because they want one solution, but it's not actually what's going to create success in the long term. Or something needs to change about the way that they are running their company or running their marketing, whatever that is. And in order to get there, we can't just provide marketing deliverables. We have to have difficult, honest conversations to get to a place where their growth is sustainable. And so I think, yeah, sometimes creating long-term value is about creating meaningful change, which can be really difficult to do when you are trying to create change in a company that's not yours.
Yeah, that's got to be really tricky. But I'm thinking that probably one of the conversations that you might be having with your client is about engagement and building that human-centered brand that people really connect with and really identify with. So, talk to us about what role community plays in marketing and leadership, and how entrepreneurs can put that into focus to help build their brands.
Yeah, it goes back to like when you're creating a business, really what you're doing is serving some population of people. And so, community, people talk about like building their community or building a community around a brand. And really, what that means is getting to know a group of people and their problems and trying to help them as best as possible. And I think this can play out in different ways. If we're working with an established brand, they have to constantly be looking back at their community to see what product does that community need next? What changes do they want to see to a product? Like where is it not serving them? What features or what aspects of something are making their experience as a customer more difficult. So constantly serving the community is a really important part of just good business and then growing because it creates more growth, better rapport, etc. And I think when you're starting out or you're thinking about your own community or what community to serve, you just have to be cognizant that you are serving a community because I think that again, like that was something I didn't really understand at first. I was like, oh, I'm just helping people one off with different projects, and then it continued to grow. And then you realize this is a business owners are a community and they have common problems, and this is you can lean in even more to listen to what are the common problems, what can I learn from the community so that I can better serve them. So yeah, it's applicable at every part of the journey, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a really great reminder. And it goes back to what you were saying about servant leadership. And we just really have to get out of our own way and really focus on who we're serving and the client and the
Yes.
customer. I love that. So, if you could share one practice or mindset shift that has been transformative for you, something every mompreneur listening today could start applying, what would that be?
That's a good question. Actually, I have something in mind because I was actually thinking about this the other day. So this concept goes back to the idea that we're always trying to plan too much or control what our next steps are. And so if it's a very simple symbol that you can think about, imagine you have a circle and or you have two circles. One circle is completely closed, it's like a perfect circle, and one circle is slightly drawn over where one of the lines is overlapping or the end of the line is overlapping a little bit with the outside of the circle. So it's an imperfect circle and it's about to go around again. And basically, the concept is that not everything we do, and we shouldn't even intend for what we do to be the perfect circle at first. What we should be intending to do is getting close enough. Like we're almost a circle, and then we're going to keep refining. And I think that's really important because you will never be amazing at business or the best at whatever you're doing immediately. But you can do it, make it exist, and then make it better. Make it exist, make it better, do it better. And I think that's something I am constantly doing because even now there are problems that are constantly coming up that I feel like deeply uncertain about.
Hmm.
But we have to trust our knowledge, we have to trust the inputs that we have from whatever we're taking in as help. And we have to get somewhere and then continue to get better at whatever that thing is. And that iteration process, I believe, is the only way that you can keep moving forward and not wanting to make the mistake, however small it is what really holds us back.
Yeah, that perfectionism just really can be the death of so many dreams and progress, which really matters. So, another great reminder. So, where is the best place that listeners can connect with you? You've given us so much great information and things to think about and insight from your experience. So, where can they connect with you and learn more about SeedX and follow along with your work?
Sure. They can connect with me on LinkedIn at my name, Jacqueline Basulto. I'm happy to connect with anyone who wants to. And then our website is just seedx.us, like USA without the A. And I'd be happy again to connect with whoever would like to and learn more about the community.
It's been such a pleasure to shine a light on your work and what you're doing. So, thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you. This was great.
Thanks, Jacqueline.
Of course.